Hey there, Spider fans! Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man has finally swung onto our screens with its first 2 episodes, and they're packed with nods, references, and Easter eggs that tie back to the MCU comics and Spider-Man lore in general. Welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master. If you're a fan of both the Web Slinger and the MCU, you're in for a treat. Let's break down 30 plus of the coolest Easter eggs from first 2 episodes.
You're gonna be late for work.
It's your first day. If one of us is gonna be late, I'd rather it's me.
Civil War font, right off the bat, we get a nod to Captain America, Civil War. The font used to establish that the show takes place in Queens is a shout out to when Tony Stark recruits Peter Parker in New York in Civil War. It's subtle but nice.
Things have been different without having Uncle Ben around, but you've always been here for me.
Uncle Ben's subtle tribute. Aunt May mentions how tough things have been for her and Peter. If you pay close attention, you'll notice her ring glinting during this conversation. It's a small but touching reminder of Uncle Ben, whose memory looms large over Peter's life.
But I've wanted to go to Midtown for years. Their robotics program is supposed to be one of the best.
Midtown Robotics. When Peter is heading to Midtown High, he mentions how excited he is to get involved in the school's robotics program. This is a direct reference to Spider-Man Homecoming, when MJ calls Peter out for mysteriously quitting his robotics lab after landing his internship with Stark Industries.
Okay, never using this spell again.
Doctor Strange and his mustache. In the first episode, we get a quick cameo from Doctor Strange. While he's not voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, the mystical powers are all there. Plus, he's got a cool Steve Ditko-inspired mustache that's definitely a throwback to the original comic version of the Sorcerer Supreme.
Not so fast.
Time Stone Use Strange uses the Time Stone to clean up a mess. Another subtle reminder of when he had the stone long before Thanos started his quest for all the Infinity Stones. Venom symbiote, the creature Doctor Strange fights, well, it's not directly named, but if you look at the credits, you'll see that it's a symbiote. It resembles Venom, but also hints at a potential Spider-Man villain, Shathra, the magical wasp woman from the comics. Could we be seeing a symbiote storyline down the line? The Great Web. In this show, Peter gets his powers from a magical spider from another dimension, tying into the concept of the Great Web. This idea was popularized in J. Michael Straczynski's run on Amazing Spider-Man and eventually led to the Spider-Verse saga. Cosmic and magical forces are at play, and this sets up some wild potential for the show. Green Goblin Jr. When Peter rescues a boy billionaire in episode 1, he's wearing a green suit. Could this be a subtle tease for Harry Osborn's eventual transformation into the Green Goblin? Only time will tell.
The webbing should wear off in an hour or so. Don't forget to not like and subscribe.
Screwball cameo. If you blink, you might miss it, but there's a quick cameo of Screwball, one of Spider-Man's more irritating villains. She shows up in the comments of Peter's live stream, demanding people check out her stream instead of his. Classic Screwball.
Parker, how about you?
Nice to meet you, Pete. I'm Nico Minoru.
Nico Minoru. Peter's first friend at Midtown High is none other than Nico Minoru, a member of the Runaways comics. Nico is a magic user similar to Doctor Strange, so it's pretty likely she'll develop powers of her own as the show progresses.
What happened to him? I don't know. He didn't like my name? Hey.
Cindy Moon, Silk. In the show, we see the spider that bites Peter crawl into someone's backpack. If you know your Spider-Man lore, you might recognize this as a setup for Cindy Moon, aka Silk, a character who gets spider powers from the same spider that gave Peter his abilities. Could we see Silk in the future? Neighbor Like Me, the show has an original theme song called Neighbor Like Me by the Math Club, Relay, and Mellow Makes Music. But listen closely, and you'll hear a playful sample from the classic 1967 Spider-Man theme song, composed by Paul Francis Webster and Bob Harris. Sam Raimi's DNA reference. When the theme song starts, there's a sequence where spiders crawl over DNA strands, which is an obvious reference to the transformation scene from Spider-Man 2002, directed by Sam Raimi. A cool, nostalgic touch. Scorpion tease. During the intro, we see a character with heterochromia, 2 different colored eyes, and there's a scorpion's tail wrapped around them. If you're a comic fan, you'll recognize this as a likely tease for Mac, aka the Scorpion, showing up later. Amazing Fantasy number 15, cover in the theme song. The title card at the end recreates the iconic Amazing Fantasy number 15 cover, where Spider-Man is swinging through New York with a criminal in his arms. This is where Spider-Man's journey officially began.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pearl. I didn't see you there.
It's not a big deal at all.
Pearl Pangan, Wave. Peter's former babysitter, Pearl Pangan, is introduced. And in the comics, she's a superhero with hydrokinesis, the ability to control water. She goes by the name Wave, and it looks like the show may eventually introduce her powers. Tobey Maguire, Doodles. In a cute reference to Spider-Man 2002, Peter is seen doodling his Spider-Man suit design, just like Tobey Maguire's version of Peter did in that film. A nice callback.
Okay, Spider-Man! Do a flip! Yeah!
Do a flip reference. If you've seen Spider-Man Homecoming, you'll remember the street vendor who shouts, "Do a flip, Spider-Man!" Well, guess what? The animated version of that vendor makes a cameo when Peter swings by. It's a fun nod to a memorable scene.
Hope this works!
Civil War shot for shot. There's a moment when Peter stops a car from crashing into a bus, and it's a shot-for-shot remake of a scene from Captain America, Civil War, where Tony Stark shows Peter the footage of his crime fighting. This time, it's all animated.
Smart guy. You ready to get to work?
You know it.
Lonnie Lincoln, Tombstone. Lonnie Lincoln is a classmate of Peter's in this version, but in the comics, he becomes the indestructible gangster Tombstone. Could we see him evolve into the villain? Let's hope he stays on the straight and narrow in the show.
It's like new. Wow, free pizza, free DVD player. It's the best.
The DVD player's origin. Remember that DVD player Peter had in Civil War? Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man gives us the origin story. He found it in a dumpster. Talk about low-tech superheroing.
Hello, Peter. It's nice to meet you.
Norman Osborn. The final moment of episode 1 mirrors a scene from Captain America, Civil War, where Peter walks into his apartment and doesn't notice who Aunt May is talking to. But this time, it's not Tony Stark, it's Norman Osborn. Could he be on his way to becoming the Green Goblin? If you've been watching Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and are a fan of Marvel Easter eggs, you've probably caught some fun nods and references from both the comics and the MCU. Here's a rundown of the coolest and most exciting Easter eggs from episode 2 that you may have missed.
Lab doing real science with real scientists?
That's kind of the whole
Brand New Day. The title card in episode 2 makes a quick reference to Amazing Spider-Man number 546 from the Brand New Day storyline, specifically the cover art by Steve McNiven. This ties directly into Norman Osborn's big entrance into the show, signaling a fresh chapter for Peter Parker and Spider-Man. A brand new day, if you will.
I'm sticking to that promise. Now that you're here, you'll be held to it too.
Oscorp. It wouldn't be a proper Spider-Man show without some mention of Oscorp, the infamous company owned by Norman Osborn. This episode drops a huge hint about Oscorp's future impact, with a towering Oscorp building standing tall in the middle of New York, just like in the comics and other adaptations. It's one of those blink and you miss it moments that sets up a lot more for the future.
We're introducing ourselves and where we are from. I am Asha, and I hail from Wakanda.
Asha. When Peter meets fellow Oscorp interns, Asha stands out. She's a transfer student from Wakanda with light-based powers that could turn her invisible. In the comics, she first appeared in Infinity, The Hunt #1, and it looks like she'll play an interesting role here too.
But if you take a side gig for Roxxon Oil, I'm staging an intervention.
Roxxon Oil. A company with ties to shady dealings across the Marvel Universe gets a mention in this episode as well. Nico casually drops the name when discussing Peter's internship at Oscorp. In the comics, Roxxon's shady nature has put it in conflict with several Marvel heroes, so it's a cool tidbit to keep an eye on.
I told Pete here that. He might have shown up on time for it. You can call me Dr. Cho.
Amadeus Cho, known as one of the most brilliant minds on Earth, makes an appearance in the show. In the comics, Amadeus has been a sidekick to Hercules and briefly became the Hulk after absorbing Bruce Banner's gamma radiation. This version seems to be setting up for something big in future episodes. Purple Pants, anyone?
I am Dr. Whitman, and I will be overseeing...
Bentley Whitman Oscorp's snide intern mentor. Bentley Whitman might seem like a regular guy, but in the comics, he's the Wizard, a villain who once sought to take down the Fantastic Four. So, will this version of Bentley stay a nice guy, or will he eventually embrace his villainous side?
Introduce herself.
Hi, Peter. I'm Carla Connors, currently with Oscorp.
Carla Connors. If you're familiar with Kurt Connors, you might notice that Carla Connors is a gender-swapped version of the Lizard's origin. Here, Carla has a deep interest in renewable energy, but there's one little detail that makes us all wonder. Will she eventually turn into the Lizard? Only time will tell.
Definitely a thing!
Butane. In an unexpected twist, Peter faces off against a lesser-known villain named Butane, who appeared in the comics as a Captain Britain foe. The show gives him a redesign, but his inclusion is an interesting choice considering he's not the most well-known villain in Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. Crusher Hogan, the wrestler Spider-Man once faced in Amazing Fantasy number 15, makes a subtle cameo when Peter and the interns are flipping through TV channels. It's a fun nod to the very beginning of Spider-Man's journey.
Well, what do we have here?
Where is Doctor? After Peter defeats Butane, he notices an infinity symbol on the villain's gauntlets. The symbol is intriguing because it could be linked to Doctor Octopus. It looks like two O's, and who's associated with Oz? Otto Octavius. Could this be a future hint at the arrival of one of Spider-Man's most iconic foes? It's definitely something to keep in mind. Daily Bugle. The Daily Bugle is featured in this universe, and if we're lucky, we might get a cameo from J. Jonah Jameson. Let's all cross our fingers for J.K. Simmons to return.
You're Spider-Man.
Our nerdy thoughts. And that's a wrap on the 30-plus Easter eggs, references, and comic connections in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Episode 1. From nods to the MCU to deep cuts from Spider-Man comics, there's a lot for fans to enjoy and speculate about. What do you think? Which Easter egg was your favorite? Let us know in the comments.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.